Hello, everybody. Welcome to Monday Night Live. My name's Derek Arden. Tonight we've got a very special guest from New Jersey, in near New York City, as everybody knows. Tom Hardin. Tom, welcome. You've got a very interesting story, Tom. So I won't muck about. I'll let you tell us your story. Welcome to Monday Night Live, and thanks for joining us.
Great, thank you for having me, Derek, and it's great to be here on Monday Night Live. Just as a brief introduction to kick things off, my name is Tom Hardin. Of course, just over 10 years ago, I was also known as Tipper X. There was a large FBI investigation in the U.S. into the crime of insider trading. So very briefly, buying stocks with information that's not public and that's material information that would move stock prices. So around the financial crisis, 85 people in my old industry, the hedge fund industry, were charged with insider trading. So these were big time multimillionaire hedge fund managers, traders, analysts. 32 of these 85 people were called cooperators. So these were hedge fund analysts like myself who helped the FBI build these larger cases. I always say you don't just volunteer to cooperate with the FBI. They do have to approach you on the street, which I'm going to talk about. And I really had no plans ever to do what I've been doing now for the past 7 years. It's usually a new group of people every week. And hey, here's the worst thing I ever did. But I got a phone call from the FBI in the summer of 2016. And I thought, oh my God, what do these guys want now? I'd be kicked out of the industry. And they said only if I wanted to would I go to downtown Manhattan to speak with the FBI's rookie agents and their white-collar crime group there about my case. Because back in the day, I was the youngest person they charged, and I made the least amount of money. So at first I thought they were rubbing it in, like I wasn't good at this. I was trying not to get caught, but they actually said, no, it's a very, very human story, the why behind the actions, why'd you do what you did? So told that to these rookie FBI agents as part of their training. And a couple agents there encouraged me to go out and share the story. So the past 7 years, just as a speaker, a corporate trainer, usually brought in around compliance training, especially in financial services. There's a lot of compliance training that has to happen. So I come in, share the story. Just to give you a quick sort of background on where I grew up. I grew up in the suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia, so southern US. Father worked there for Coca-Cola Company. Mother stayed at home with the three boys, middle-class family, first of my family to attend college, University of Pennsylvania. Graduated just at the turn of the century and started working in the hedge fund business in 2000. My first job was at a tech stock focused hedge fund in Greenwich, Connecticut. The fund's no longer around. But pretty early in my career, I got wind that other people covering tech stocks like me at different hedge funds were trading stocks on inside information. There might be investors in hedge funds who are CEOs and CFOs of these tech stock companies in Silicon Valley. So you can imagine if these individuals are invested in a hedge fund, there might be a conflict of interest there in terms of sharing information about their upcoming corporate events. So this is happening. So now we're around 2006. About 60% of stocks before they're acquired in the public markets had unexplained spikes in the share prices. So you might see a corporate deal announced, company A is buying company B. And if you were to pull up the stock chart of company B, you could see the stock price running for weeks and weeks in advance. So leakage of information is happening. I know what's going on as a young analyst in my 20s. I never felt I had to cross that proverbial line, at least early in my career. I was known as a great stock picker. One of my career making trades that I never saw happen was after Google's IPO. After a year of studying Google, I kind of figured out that the yellow page companies were probably going out of business. So the one trade I never saw happen was to be long Google and short the yellow pages. That would have been the only trade I ever would have needed for my career. Didn't see that, unfortunately, pan out. And so I know what's going on. Don't feel I have to cross the line. And then one day, my boss came into my office. This is my second job in 2006, 2007. Now I'm a junior partner, 29 years old at a hedge fund. So I've worked my way up from analyst to a junior partner, a great seat. Just myself, my boss, and a CFO. He comes into my office one day and he says, Tom, I know we're investing longer term, over 3 to 5 years, but we had just lost money in the first quarter of our investing, sort of starting our fund, we have to start looking for shorter term opportunities to make money every month, or we would not survive. And so when any goal in the business goes from longer term like that to shorter term, the opportunity to start to cut corners certainly increases. And I'd also say, when I think about it in my corporate talks today, I talk a lot about ambiguous messages from senior managers. So the ambiguity in his message to me to do what it takes played a part in these decisions I'm about to make here. And so, Derek, maybe I'll just pause there. Any clarifying questions, or just to set the stage for the next events?
No, that's great, Tom. And we have discussed on Monday Night Live before, when you cross the line, and we know a lot of people have crossed the line, and you know, once you do that, it's very difficult not to do it, isn't it? And you know, that's you keep carrying on. But I can see another Monday Night Live coming up about bribes and other issues and pressure that comes down, particularly when you're young. No, thanks, Tom.
Yeah, so the pressure went from, make money the next 3 years to make money every month. And so a few months later, I got a call from another investor who had worked for this guy, Rajaratnam, a Sri Lankan billionaire hedge fund manager. He might be the most famous person charged with insider trading. She had worked for him. She said, hey, all this is going on. I had made her a lot of money over the last few years. I give her my best stock tip every year. This is my best idea of the year. She had very explicit information for me. She said a Moody's analyst, so at the bond rating agency in the US, who was roommates with her cousin, told her a company, Kronos, was going to be acquired. Like, here's the date, here's the price, here's the private equity firm. So in our business, that's very explicit information. It's not like a rumor. Like, she was full of rumors when she would call, but she said this is exactly happening. And so at first I thought, well, this sounds illegal. I would never trade this stock. But later that day, I'm talking to a friend outside my firm who I talk to once a month, not a close friend. He works at a trading firm where he only got paid if he made money for the firm that month. He's down, we're talking. He said, Tom, are you hearing anything out there I could put a short-term trade on? It kind of was a throwaway comment. I said, I'm not going to trade this, but this is happening. This woman said this in a few weeks. Here's the date, here's the price. And in my finance talks today, I say, look, I could be charged with insider trading just for sharing this information. I have no idea what he's going to do with it. He tells his whole firm, they're excited, they're buying the stock. I see it starting to trade up. And then a few days later, he calls me and he said, hey, did you buy some? And when an employee commits fraud, it's usually, there's three reasons. There's the fraud triangle. There is the need to cross that line we talked about. So was there a need in my life to really do this? Not really. Of course, there's a need for short-term performance. So maybe there's the opportunity to do it. So the opportunity at my firm was I could buy a stock in our portfolio and not have to talk to the boss, as long as it was less than 1% of the assets we manage for clients, a very small position. And I calculated and bought a 0.9% position in the portfolio in Kronos. And the third reason why an employee commits fraud often is its rationalization. So I totally rationalized what I did. I said, all these other guys are doing it, making millions. Who am I really hurting? I told myself I'm just buying this stock before everybody else. I said, I'll do it just this once and never do it again. And I actually told myself, I could buy this stock, and I still thought of myself as a good person, faithful husband, church volunteer. And so I had this moral scale in my head where I also said, we do thousands of trades a year. I can do one bad one. That's the way I looked at it in my head. And if my boss had a problem, he would ask me about it, of course. And so one of the bigger takeaways now with my corporate talks is I made a decision in isolation. So an idea of isolated decision-making where information comes to me. I don't talk to the boss. I don't talk to anybody. Made the decision on my own to cross that line at my firm. It would happen 3 more times like this, tips and trades from this lady, the boss never asking me questions. Now, these stocks are all up about 30% before the markets opens. And so we're going through our portfolio, looking at the stocks with the boss. He doesn't ask me any questions about the situation. So again, I'm rationalizing where he thinks it's fine. With me, he's the closest thing I have to a mentor. And it happened 4 times like that. The firm made $1 million on these trades. We managed about 100 million for clients. So it added 1% of performance. And personally, I made $46,000 on these 4 trades. So It's not like I was trying to make millions, trying not to get caught. So $46,000, I always say it's very bluntly, the price of professional suicide for me, unfortunately, at 29 years old, was $46,000. So happy to pause there before we get to the next part of the story.
Yeah, wow. Professional suicide. I can see that. Yeah. There's no questions at the moment in the chat box, Tom, and I'm only taking them in the chat box at the moment until we start recording. So so if you're okay, then keep going.
Yeah. So bought, $46,000 at the end of 2007. Now the 4 trades were in 2007. The woman who was tipping me called me out of breath. She said, Tom, the SEC, the regulator in the US, had just called her and was asking her about one of these trades. What should I say, Tom? What should I say? And I thought, oh my God, what if the SEC were to call me next? Like, I had nothing written up, no research I did written up for why I bought these stocks. What would I say? And the problem is, once you light that match, you can't unlight the match. You can't take the trades away. I could only try to put the match out. So I concocted in my head a plan. I might be able to tell the SEC if they were to call me next. And now it's very important to know, like the American boxer Mike Tyson used to say, everybody has a plan in this situation until you get punched in the mouth. So the SEC didn't call me and say, hey, Tom, it's the SEC. Could you call us back about your insider trading? Instead, it was a July morning, 2008, middle of the financial crisis, Tuesday morning, 6:30. I'm leaving my apartment in Midtown Manhattan to drop off some dry cleaning before getting a taxi to the office. Stepped on the sidewalk, and this guy behind me said, "Are you Tom?" And I turned around, 2 FBI agents, dark suits, wallets out. You've seen any American crime show, you've seen the scene, FBI, come sit down with us. So we went and sat down at a fast food restaurant in Manhattan. And he said, look, man, we know about your 4 trades. We know that you were just down in Atlanta, Tom, last weekend, visiting your baby nephew, when he said his name, for his baptism. So, these guys are onto me. I thought, oh my God, my first thought with the FBI in my face was, my dad's going to kill me. What's he going to say? And I thought, oh my God, my wife's going to find out. She had no idea. She's going to leave me. And then I thought, holy crap, this might impact my career. Oh my God, I might be going to prison. But it went from dad to prison. I start making implicating statements. Yes, I made those 4 trades. And he's like writing it down. He's saying, go on, go on. And he said, Tom, I want to stop you there. He said, do you know of illicit trading going on Wall Street right now? And to my knowledge, it was quite rampant. I said, yes, this is rampantly going on. He pulled out a web of names of insider trading tipping charts with circles and arrows. I couldn't see the names, but he had 2 big targets at the top of the sheet of paper. I assume one of those guys was this guy, Raj Rajaratnam. He folded it up. He gave me his card. He said, Tom, you have the opportunity to help us build some cases here. It's going to help you out, Tom. I took his card and I said, should I talk to an attorney first? And the FBI said, we'll let you know when you can do that. So I'll pause there just to see if any questions.
Tom, how long was it between you worrying about the SEC calling you and you actually getting these 2 guys in suits at 6:30 in the morning? Was that a week, few weeks?
It was about 6 months, actually. So she calls me January saying the SEC had contacted her. And so I'm concerned, obviously, that they might ask me, but I had been told, as long as you have some cover story, the dumb government regulator, you can just sort of tell them something and then they'll hang up the phone. So that was not until July. So it's 5 or 6 months after that call. So I kind of stopped thinking about it after a few months. Like, everybody's doing this, they're going to go after the people making millions, not me. And then July was the FBI situation.
And when did you notice you were crossing the line? At which point, on the first trade or the 4th trade?
Yeah, no, the first trade. I mean, after it actually happened, I kind of told myself as I bought the stock, maybe it's just a rumor. She could be full of it. Who do I even know who she's really talking to? And then when it happens, I hate to say it, instead of having a moral epiphany, like, holy crap, I just crossed the line. I have to figure this out now. I have to tell the boss and call the SEC. I got kind of a feeling of adrenaline. I hate to say it. Like, now I'm part of the solicit in group as a young professional. There was a group of people who I knew I wasn't part of that group. and now I'm part of the group. And so I hate to say that I had some puffery, just sort of like the next time I saw these guys at the conferences that I'd attend that I knew were doing it, I said, hey, I know about Chronos. And one of them said, how do you know that? Tom, you do real work, you do real analysis. I said, actually, I do that too, but I also know about the next one coming. And then one of them put his arm around me and said, now you're part of our group. And so I think a lot of it was just like wanting to be part of that group. And so it became easy to do it the 3 more times after the first time. And then also my boss, again, looking the other way.
Okay. I think you should carry on. There's a couple of more questions. We'll take those later.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the FBI there, don't talk to an attorney. I took his card. I didn't talk to an attorney. And that summer in New York City, 2 people like myself approached by the FBI killed themselves. You might think your life is over. I had some pretty dark nights. Finally called the FBI. I said, I do know of illicit trading going on Wall Street. I didn't talk to an attorney. I said, what does it mean to help the FBI? I was so naive. And he said, Tom, what you're going to have to do for your country, or the way he framed this, is wear what's called a body wire. And it's not something that was like taped to my chest. It was in my front pocket. So it was a small recording device about an inch or 2 big. So it fit in my front dress shirt pocket. And they said, who can you bring us, basically? And I said, who do you want? It's sort of like anybody I could have gone after, but I felt like I would go after who I thought were the worst actors. The problem was I didn't know them that well. It was more by reputation. And so it might be a 48-year-old multimillionaire hedge fund manager. I'm a 29-year-old analyst. What I try to do is get conversations with people at Starbucks and say, hey, I'm looking for a job. I'm interviewing around, which in 2008 was very, that was going to be like a crazy story to tell. And so we'll get people in face-to-face conversations and then ask them about times that they may have traded on stocks with inside information. And so a pretty awkward experience to be doing this. I mean, think about if you're on the other side of the table from me getting coffee and saying, hey, remember 2 years ago when you traded on inside information, what would you say if you were ever asked as to why you did that? And I'm kind of leaning in like this in the conversation. And sometimes people would say, change the subject. One Sunday afternoon, there was a guy high up the FBI's list. I got him probably in 15 conversations over my first year of wearing the wire. And I'm still actually holding on to my job too at this point. He would always change the subject. One Sunday afternoon, he gave me a call and he said, Tom, we need to have dinner tonight. We need to talk. And so I called the FBI and said, this guy you want wants to have dinner. They met me at the train station in Manhattan in Grand Central to give me the wire. I took the train out to Greenwich, Connecticut, where this guy lived. He picked me up at the train station. He said, Tom, good to see you. I brought swim trunks for you. We're going swimming at my mother's house. So I'm not a good swimmer. The Sopranos, that show was popular that summer. So all these ideas are going through my head. I played it cool, got into his car. I said, let's go swimming. We go to this house. He starts disrobing in this room. He wants to see if something's taped to my chest. It was in my front pocket. Now I'm about to have a heart attack. I excused myself, went to the restroom, took the wire out, put it in my jeans, put these swim trunks on. So it's the 2 of us walking out to this pool. It was so quiet. I saw a shovel against the house, a hole in the ground. I thought, oh my God, is this guy going to try to kill me or something? And we got in the swimming pool and he grabs a tennis ball and we're playing this awkward game of catch. So he's pouring it on psychologically. And after a few minutes of freaking me out, he said, Tom, I've spoken to an attorney and he has to ask me a question. I have to answer truthfully. I was so scared I was going to just give up my cover. I wanted to go home. I said, what do you want to know? He said, okay, Tom, have you been approached by the SEC, who's the regulator? And truthfully, I could say, no, not the SEC. He didn't catch that nuance. He said, okay, I'm sorry. I just had to make sure you weren't wearing a wire, Tom. And then he starts making implicating statements once he saw the wire wasn't on me the way he pictured it. And he was actually never charged by the FBI. I think he retired a few years ago, but he never had me in as a guest speaker. So that was the craziest moment of this whole thing where I thought my life might be in danger. And just to finish it up, early 2010, the FBI is kind of done with me. So I'm 2 years into wearing the wire. I finally hired an attorney, actually a year into this, I finally hired an attorney. The FBI told me to talk to an attorney. You can imagine how that went. I called a few people in New York and said, hey, the FBI told me to talk to you now. And of course, the attorney said, well, who was your attorney before me? I said, you're the first I've spoken to. And he said, Tom, you're supposed to hire me the first day the FBI approached you on the street. I said, you know what? It's my first time doing this. So it's pretty straightforward for me. I'm going to plead guilty. I helped the FBI quite a bit. And eventually, at the end of 2009, I wasn't sure how this was going. The FBI never really told me how I was doing for them. It was always sort of like stone-faced. You can imagine FBI agent, no emotion. The fall of 2009, I had left my firm. I was worried my name might come out any day because in the newspaper they talked about these cases and they called somebody Tipper X in these cases. They kept referring to the mysterious Tipper X helping the FBI, and so I didn't know I was Tipper X the first time, but I quickly figured it out. It's probably me, and so that's what the FBI called me. And so, end of 2009, I leave my firm. My wife's in the hospital giving birth to our first daughter. The FBI calls me and says, turn on CNBC. I turn it on. There's like 20 people in handcuffs being arrested by the FBI. And they said, this was all your work, Tom. And so a pretty big day for the Hardin household. I always say this situation. And then eventually I had to plead guilty. My name became public when the FBI was done with me. So that was a terrible day. You know, anybody that knew me on Wall Street, I say is a victim of what I did because they actually had to tell, you know, their compliance officer, hey, I know this guy, Tom, and they had no idea, you know, I was involved in this. And then I wasn't sentenced for almost 7 years until after the FBI approached me. So especially in the States, it can take years and years. The judge looked at my case. I helped the FBI build 20 of these 85 cases. She went back to her chambers and she's like, you know, what's the point of sending you to prison? Just go on with your life. So I'm extremely lucky I wasn't incarcerated. You know, I can't go to colleges doing scared straight prison stories, but it doesn't matter. Convicted felon, unfortunately, the rest of my life. Can't have a personal trading account, can't work in any regulated industry again. And I can't even have a personal checking account in the US because I'm on every anti-money laundering list in the world, an AML list. And so it's not a complaint, it's just some consequences of my poor choices back, you know, back when I was a young professional. And so about a year after I'm sentenced, the FBI invited me to speak about it. And that's where I am today. So.
Wow. Congratulations on what you've done and being honest about it, etc. There's a few questions in the chat box I'll ask you before we. So what about your family? When did you tell your family?
Yeah, so the FBI approaches me on that Tuesday morning on the street. They said I could only tell my wife. And I thought, well, that's easier said than done. You know, she's going to leave me. 85% of marriages actually end when the spouse gets a felony. I mean, it's not a surprise. And so that was a Tuesday morning. I waited till Friday after work. I was having panic attacks, bad sweats. She could see I wasn't me. You know, I always like to make jokes and make her laugh. And so I was very serious. I was always waking up before she woke up to get to the office and then getting home late just so I didn't have to tell her about this. And then Friday, I couldn't take it anymore. I'm like, I'm going to tell her. And so walk home, New York City, you know, young couple, how was your week? And she was actually working at Lehman Brothers. And so she had all the stories. I said, okay, wait, let me go first. Something happened this week. And I said, you have to sit down. And I told her, you know, on Tuesday morning, the FBI approached me. I did do this. They're giving me the opportunity to help them out. And she waited a second and then she said, can you repeat that? It wasn't what she was thinking. And then she said, well, you didn't do anything to hurt me. If they're giving you a chance to clean up the industry, you should probably do it. So in 85% of situations, the wife would say, I'm out of here. You know, I married the future multimillionaire hedge fund guy, not the future Tipper X, right? So that was very lucky. I've never met somebody in my situation where the wife stays with them. So I'm very lucky in that regard. And then I couldn't tell my parents until my name became public. So I flew them up. They came to visit me in New Jersey, and then that was a very tough conversation because, you know, all they can talk about is my success from little school in Georgia to this Ivy League school. I was never supposed to get into this hedge fund career, and so that was tough. But it's better now. So it's just I think somebody in my situation can either own their bad choices or try to like scrub their Google profile to get rid of this. And so I figured why not own it and do some good for younger professionals.
Well, I'm so pleased to hear that your wife stood by you in those circumstances. You clearly have a wonderful wife. How did you manage your stress and your blood pressure and your heartbeat at that time?
Yeah. So 2008 financial crisis. Our performance is terrible at work. Mine's terrible at work, not just for the stock picking, but everything else I have going on my side job. wearing the wire for the FBI. My health was pretty terrible. I was well over 200 pounds, so quite heavy. And so I'm out of work. At least my wife, she was able to find a job after Lehman went under. So thank God she could at least, we could just pay the basic expenses every month. But I'm a stay-at-home dad, depressed, quite heavy. At one point, I'm carrying my daughter up the stairs in my house and I'm out of breath. And I go to the doctor, and I haven't been in 10 years. I guess typical guy. I hadn't been to the doctor in a long time. Nothing was wrong. And then he said, "You're well over 200 pounds, and your blood work is terrible. You know, is something going on in your life?" And I figured, like, doctor, do you have an hour or two? This is not a short conversation. And I told my wife. She signs me up for a 5K race. She was a runner. And so I started running, and then she actually beat me in the race, pushing our daughter in the jogging stroller, but it lit a fire. I went from doing 5Ks to half marathons to marathons to ultra marathon races. So anything longer than the marathon distance. But the problem was I was so into endurance sports at this point, I lost 70 pounds. I wasn't dealing with what I had to actually deal with in my life, like my professional future, these important conversations with my wife. And then I signed up for a 100-mile race around a 1-mile loop. And so you're supposed to run these races. I'm not in the best headspace, but this is all I can do. I can't work doing these endurance events. And my car is there every mile, getting my Gatorade or whatever, my food to get through this 100 miles. And at mile 78, my race is basically done. My body's breaking down. That's 3 marathons. I'm done with this race. I pop the trunk, go to my air mattress there in the trunk of my car, and there's a note from my wife. And she says, "We didn't sleep on you. You can't sleep on us." So talk about more tough love for me. I turn around, finish the race, and just a long story short, I was dealing with a lot of shame and guilt, and I didn't know the difference. Guilt is I did a bad thing, and it still keeps me going today. Shame is I'm a terrible person and did a bad thing. And I quickly learned after that that shame is not helpful for anybody. The guilt keeps me going with these presentations, but the shame is not. So once I understood the difference, it actually became mentally a little bit easier to deal with the situation.
Last question, because we're nearly out of time on the recording. Do you think artificial intelligence would have stopped this happening in 2023?
Yeah, no, I think today with what's out there, absolutely. At least it would have been, if we had any trading surveillance like we have today, this fact pattern, the tip, the trade, the small trade, it would have set off alarms because it was around events. But the problem is today, the way the crime is being committed, it's way beyond what I did. Not that it can't happen like I did, but it's so far beyond that there's more, international bad actors hacking corporate issuer websites, trying to get information. And so I think the bad actor is always ahead of the market surveillance, and it often takes the regulators a few years to catch up to where the bad actors are. And so when you see cases, the SEC is very punitive in the States. You'll see a case once a week, but it's a very easy case. You'll see somebody works at a public company. They found out it was going to be acquired and they call it a relative in the stock market. And the SEC takes 5 minutes to prosecute these. I don't think they have the resources to actually go after the bigger bad actors because it's government regulators. So, overwork, underpaid, don't have the resources. I think their budget should be 10x what it is to really catch the people using AI and other things today. So we'll see.
So on one piece of advice for any younger person watching this that might just be tempted to cross the line, whatever that is?
Yeah, no, I think we all rationalize. We're all human beings, not just criminals. 2 things, I guess, think about if you're 25, think about where you want to be when you're 35 and then work backwards. Find a mentor that's around that age that can get you there. I didn't have any mentors in my 20s. I guess the closest mentor I have was my boss. And so that wasn't a great situation. And so figure out, think long-term and work backwards. Also, I was drowning in insecurity because my competition was, breaking the law to get ahead. So that fateful moment where I could have hung up the phone and not did that. I was, I think, really insecure about these guys are cheating and they're getting ahead. I'm not, when I totally should have been competing against myself, focused on self-improvement, focused investing is like a lot of pattern recognition. So focusing on the pattern recognition, improving at that over the years and not drowning in insecurity. So another piece of advice to 20 something Tom today is just focus on yourself, just competing against yourself. Who cares if other people are cheating to get ahead? So.
Tom, that's fantastic. I know you're in London last week or the week before, and you did 4 corporate talks. If anyone watching this wants to get hold of you, how do they do that?
Yeah, so I've now trademarked TipperX, so TIPPERX.com, Tom at TipperX.com, and so that's the easiest way to reach me.
Okay, well, Tom Hardin, thanks so much for joining Monday Night Live, and we hope to catch up with you in the not too distant future. So can I ask members of Monday Night Live to give Tom the usual round of thanks in the normal way?
Thank you. Appreciate it. Pleasure to be here.
Tom, thanks so much.